I really enjoy using the Claude Code extension on VS Code, but I do not like the Claude plan. There are just so many complaints about rate limits on the plans that I wanted to find another way to still get the same experience of the Claude Code extension while not having to use a Claude plan. And this will be what I'll be sharing with you in this video, because I don't see any guides out there that focus on the extension. Most of them are just sharing about the CLI on the terminal. The Claude Code extension is really cool. I really enjoy using it because it works so seamlessly inside of VS Code. I'm able to access all my files anytime and still have Claude right there so that I'm able to converse with it. I've tried many other extensions on VS Code and none of them have that same user experience that I really enjoy. But if you do want to switch to other models, you may have seen that most of them talk about Claude Code inside of the terminal, which is the command line interface. So something similar to this screenshot, that I was able to switch it over to use GLM 4.7 as my main model. But the settings for the terminal as well as the Claude Code extension is quite different. So you won't be able to access those models inside of the extension. And that's why I decided to create this entire video to guide you through all of the steps. So if you want to add any of your models inside of Claude Code and use those instead of Opus, Sonnet, or Haiku, the very first thing that I would need you to do is to search whether there's an Anthropic compatible endpoint for that specific model provider that you have subscribed to. In this case, you can see that I searched for the Xi, which is the GLM subscription plan that I've subscribed to. And there are two different kinds of endpoints, the OpenAI as well as the Anthropic compatible endpoints. And the one that I'm more focused on is the Anthropic one. It can be a Google search, or if you need any help, feel free to leave your questions in the comments as well. This tutorial also requires you to edit some code, but not to worry, I'll show you how easy it is. I've already prepared a template for you, so you can just copy it inside and just make some of the changes to it based on the model that you've chosen. Now that all of that is out of the way, let's just get started. And let me quickly show you how you can use any of these models inside of the Claude Code extension. So just a primer that all of these stats that I'll be sharing with you today can be found inside my Substack newsletter. I'll leave the link inside of the description. The one that I'll be using today is my Xi GLM plan, where I'm only spending $10 a month and the rate limits are slightly higher than a Claude plan. So I'm able to get much more stuff done inside of my system than if I were to buy a $20 Claude plan. So inside of VS Code, if you're already there, you need to install the Claude Code extension. A very quick way on how to do it, you can go to the Extensions tab, click on the Claude, search for Claude, and then just install it here. And the most important thing that you need to change here is the settings. So I'll go to this page, click on Settings, and then inside of here, my tutorial is slightly outdated because it has this edit in settings.json. There's a button here, but then now it's actually at this point. So all you need to do is just to click here, and you can see that there's this ton of code down here. So what I actually did was modify it from the Minimax documentation that I saw. And basically all you need to do, you can understand all of this from my newsletter. After you've installed it, you can then just copy this entire portion. Unfortunately, there's no copy paste, but for the entire thing, but you can just paste it inside of here. So if you're new to coding, this can seem very overwhelming to you, but not to worry. Basically, it is just trying to tell you these are all of the environment variables within Claude Code, and there are all of these ones that we need to configure. So this includes the Anthropic base URL, which is the one that we were finding for just now. And in my case, since I'm using the GLM model, this would be my base URL. And this will differ depending on which model plan that you subscribe to. Again, if you need any help with this, let me know in the comments. The next one would be the API key, and this is the most important one. It's sort of like a password for your account. And in my case, if I want to use any of my APIs, I have a ton of them here. I can just create another one here and just put to delete because I'll be deleting this afterwards. Then I'll just copy it and I'll paste it inside of this place. But I'll do that later because there are some other things that we need to configure. If you search for your specific provider and Claude Code, some of them may come up with this documentation that shares exactly how you can configure Claude Code, but it's more aimed towards the command line interface, but you're able to use it similarly for the extension with just a few tweaks. So all of this we have already done. We have already generated the API key. And then now this would be the most important part, which is the different types of models. So if you're familiar with all of the entire family, Haiku is the lowest tier, Sonnet is more of the mid tier, and then Opus will be the premier model that enables a lot of thinking, and you'll be able to carry out high performance tasks very quickly. You need to route all of these models towards the model provider of your choice. There may be different model variants that you have, and you can choose to rank them accordingly using this same hierarchy. In the case of Xi, they already shared this hierarchy where both Sonnet and Opus can use the GLM 4.7, while GLM 4.5 Air, that's somewhat like Gemini Flash or Claude Haiku, that's the lower tier model that doesn't require a lot of thinking. Then you can route it over to the Haiku model instead. So there's just a lot of these different options, but this is kind of outdated because now GLM, there's already 5.1 as the highest tier model. So you could see the documentation, and again, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. So here, I'm just going to do the same for this entropic model. You could just put it as 4.7. Again, you need to remove the entire brackets here. And then here, I'll just put GM 4.7 Flash because there's already that model there. So I'll also put it as GRM 4.7, but Opus, I'll put it as GRM 5.1. This fast model name, I'll just put it as Flash again. So here, it mentions that there's GRM 4.5 Air, but I do know because I've been playing around with my Xi coding plan that there's this GLM 4.7 Flash model. So I'll put it there. It ultimately depends on how your model provider names all of these different models. And all of this will be found inside your documentation. You could ask AI what are the different model IDs so that they'll be able to route through them. So this is how we have already done it all up. And don't forget to save it, Command S for a Mac, and let's try it out. So what we can do is to click on the Claude Code extension. I'll just shift it over to the side. And then here we can click on the /command/model. And then this lets us switch between all of the different models that we have. So again, Sonnet, we have already configured it to 4.7, Opus to 5.1, and Haiku to 4.7 Flash. So let's just try it out and see whether it works or not. So I'll just type what model are you running, and it may take a while. Let's just see what the result comes from it. So the mistake that I made here was that I forgot to add in my API key. So let me just quickly do that. So again, if you click here, you put settings, and then go to add in settings in JSON. Let me just add my API key here, and it should be able to work now. So let's try it again. I've just added in my API key. It didn't work again. So what I actually had to do was to restart it. And then now you can see that, yes, it is actually running GLM 4.7 inside of Claude Code. You can try switching between all of the models. I will go with Opus and just ask again, what model are you running? And it should come back with GLM 5.1. So you can see that it thinks that it's still running GLM 4.7. But since we have already switched it over to 5.1, then it should be fine. Again, we can just try it with Haiku, which is then swap over to GLM 4.7 Flash. And then let's try it again. It's taking quite a while, but we can just wait for the response. So the reason why I chose GLM is because it's a decent enough plan. And for $10 a month, I do think it's something worth trying out as a cheaper alternative than the Claude Opus plans while getting similar qualities and much higher rate limits. I have a link myself so that you can get 10% off your plan. Feel free to use it, feel free to skip it as well, but I'll just leave it in the description. And yep, you can see that now it's running GLM 4.7 Flash, and we have successfully added all of these models inside of Claude Code. This is our recent usage, and you can see even just with like all of these very simple tasks, it has already hit 5 million tokens, which is kind of crazy. That just shows that, yep, this is successful. We are actually using the API that we currently have, and you're able to use the Claude Code extension for much cheaper. So this was the system that I used to teach, and I thought that it was good enough so long as you have a model provider with a custom endpoint, you more or less will be able to use Claude Code inside of Visual Studio Code, and you'll be able to start doing any commands for it. It doesn't necessarily have to be coding related. You could still execute tasks similar to what I'm doing now. But there are limitations to this setup, which I've soon found enough whenever I tried to switch between different model providers. It is just not flexible enough. Every time when I have an open router key and then I want to use that instead, I need to click here and then after that edit everything in the JSON, because the Claude Code extension is only able to support one model provider at any point in time. And what I've also found is that when I've configured Open Router inside of this setup, it actually comes up with this error, the redacted thinking. So it is actually able to, so when I just type test and then you see that, okay, it's able to think all of this. But when it comes up with the actual output, it keeps getting this error. And then here, there's just some errors that I had trying to play around with other different models. And then it just says that there's no context management, which is very annoying and very frustrating for me at that point in time. So while I do like the Claude Code extension experience inside of VS Code, I'm starting to move away from that because I want the flexibility of using any model provider that I like, and I can easily switch between all of them without having to constantly go back to the settings and change it every single time. How this system works for you if you're happy with just using one model, I would suggest building out a portable AI system using a completely new software to automate all of your workflows. So if you're curious to know more about this new system that I'm currently running myself, check out the video that appears on the screen right now.